All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Zachary Lyman. I'm an incoming freshman, and I'm partnering with the Shriner STEM Mountaineer camp to do some videos. And this is also an opportunity for me to meet the professors. And so we thought it would be a good idea to record so that y'all, as the viewers, can join along and kind of get a feel for the STEM camp, even though we're not able to have that this year because of the 2020 COVID situation. Right now, I'm talking to Dr. Caesar. How are you doing today?
Very good. And you?
I'm doing great.
All right.
So I have just a couple questions. Some of them are, to get a feel for what your class is going to be like. And then a few others are really to get more of a sense of your personality and to get to know you better as a person and as a professor. If students need help in class, how should they reach out to you?
Well, one of the simplest things about it is just to ask, talk to us, whether it's in class or sending an email or something like that. I think that, one of the most important skills for an incoming freshman to have and to learn is how to ask for help and to not be shy or embarrassed or weird about it. It's one of the reasons why a small school like Shriner is good. It's one of the hugest benefits is that you have access to professors. And I personally am fairly informal, and I love talking and helping with my students outside of class times. And so just ask. That's the easiest thing to do. I know a lot of students can be shy or intimidated by the college experience, especially at first. Um, but, if possible, that would be it would be hugely beneficial to get over that. So yeah, just learn how to ask, or send an email or whatever. There are some other things that you can do. We have other student support services on campus. But asking for help, I think, is one of the most important skills for success for a college student.
Okay, awesome. And do you have any preferred time or a certain day that works better for you, or just is it any time?
Well, the university requires all faculty to have a certain number of set office hours, and those will be established by each professor individually and listed in the syllabus and on the course webpage and things like that. I personally, for going into fall, haven't decided exactly when my office hours are yet. But I'll be honest with you, set office hours are kind of an old school thing. And in this day and age, when you have so much technology to help you get access to professors, you kind of have to feel out each professor. But I'm very informal and very up on tech, I guess, for somebody my age. And I will respond to student emails, in the evenings and on weekends. I'm available to interact via chat or something like that outside of regular set office hours. So kind of the way that I always handle is just by appointment. If you want to speak to me face to face or on video or something, we'll just make an appointment at some time that's mutually good for us, even if it happens to be in the evening or something. It's one of the benefits of more work from home due to coronavirus is that we have all these video chats now. And so, yeah, no real specific time, just not when I'm teaching in another class or in some other meeting. So
I remember I sat in on one of your classes, and it was kind of a group discussion on I believe it was on DNA splicing. But what would you say is your typical teaching style? Is it usually conversations like that, or do you just hand out assignments, or do you guide students through the course?
Yeah, good question. I remember that class. So the answer is it kind of depends on the class. Now, that class that you set in on is one that I teach, and I'm teaching in the fall. It's called Science and Society. And in that class, I do a whole lot of that style of fairly informal discussions with students. Students may have something outside of class to read that's from current events or videos that we watch. And then we do a lot of discussion. And that's a class that's kind of designed to expose students who are both science majors and not science majors to just kind of understanding some of the basic way that science works that impacts their daily lives or the daily lives of the population. And what are some of the kind of misconceptions out there in the general public about science and things like that. And I do that kind of thing in a lot of my classes. Although, if it's a freshman introductory biology class, for example, I spend a little bit more time doing lecturing where the idea is to try and get students up to speed on some of the basics. And then if it's a more upper division class, we might do kind of an even mix of discussion and lecturing. But I do personally for my classes very much love having conversations with students. I think you actually learn a lot more in that way than almost any other way. So if a student comes in with a question or something that they've seen in the news or something like that, I absolutely love sort of getting off the planned topic and just discussing it. And I pride myself on being able to find ways to get kind of random questions, even about just like life or pop culture, somehow connected back to the biology that we're learning in class. And so I very much appreciate very informal interactions and sort of spontaneous interactions in my classes. And a lot of that just depends on the students. The students got to kind of ask those kinds of questions or bring up topics. And I'll run with it very often if I can make it connected to the class.
What else would you like students to take from your classes besides just the specific what's supposed to be taught? What else would you like students to take from your classes?
Well, I kind of touched on it in the last one, but especially if it's a freshman introductory biology course, we tend to have those courses with both biology majors and science majors and non-majors because it's a core requirement class. And so a freshman who's majoring in business might be in my class, or exercise science, or English, or something like that. And for those students, basically, I really think that my main mission is to have the basic understanding of the concepts of biology. That's what the course, the first freshman course is called. But really to be able to find a way as they go future, and maybe this is the only biology class they ever will take, to sort of be able to connect it to their lives in some way. Now, again, by incorporating a lot of current events, you can bet we're going to talk a lot about viruses this upcoming semester. You're going to be subjected to diseases, for example, whether you're a biologist or not. And so those are the kinds of things that I try and impart. I talk a lot about just nutrition, because everybody eats, right? So what is the stuff about biology and the chemicals of life that a business major who never takes a biology class again can understand when they sit down to eat a meal, which happens typically every day, right? And just appreciate the way that science works. That's one of my main things, in addition to the very basics. It's kind of a challenge, actually, because a lot of schools don't mix majors and non-majors the way that we do. But I also want to keep biology majors very interested. So to try and push them and challenge them to reach out beyond what I'm teaching and go out and find things that they're interested in within biology. It's a huge field, actually. And so what is it that makes a student who's a freshman and wants to major in biology really find a passion for it and want to learn more about it on their own, I guess is my kind of overall goal, other than teaching them the basics.
With going out and finding a passion in biology, I know you do research with damselflies,
Mm-hmm.
and you offer students the opportunity to help with that and do field work and collect samples. How does that work, and how can students get involved?
Great question. So yeah, my main, I have a couple of areas of research that I spend more time on, and the damselfly stuff is one of them. And so what I'm interested in doing with that in a real quick basics is looking at how different populations of a specific species of damselflies, these are aquatic insects that live on the rivers around here, how do they differ genetically from one place to another? In other words, are there differences in the populations or not that we can measure and see? And if there are, what do they relate to in terms of periods when you have flooding or droughts, or places where humans have a lot of activity, places where humans have put dams and things like that. Is this interrupting patterns from nature of how these different populations interact, how they breed, things like that? And so for something like that, it involves, as you said, collecting. So a little bit of field work. We go out during the summer months, except for not now with coronavirus, but typically I have students over the summer, and we'll go out periodically and collect. And of course, if you like being outdoors and like the river, it's a beautiful thing. We go to a lot of like extremely scenic spots in the area on different rivers, but certainly including our own river here, the Guadalupe. And collect, and then we go back into the lab. And so then the lab work, which can happen during regular semesters and things like that, involves doing DNA extractions, looking at different genetic techniques to sort of measure those genes and then compare them to one another. And it's a long process, and students that get involved with it typically end up working on these projects with me for several semesters. Now, you will learn probably from other videos and interviews that you're doing as a group, what other professors do. And again, I have a few other projects. That's just my main one. But the other question of how do students get involved and how do we want students get involved? Again, it usually involves just getting onto campus, getting into classes, and asking questions of the professors. We have a couple of ways that students can actually get course credit for doing research. We have some programs which are a little bit competitive, but where we can actually pay students an hourly wage to work on the research projects. Basically, it's a matter of showing interest, asking your professors questions, and then making some kind of simple application or registering for the course. And what we really would like to see, and have been somewhat successful with, is again, getting students who might start showing interest right when they get on campus or sometime during their freshman year, but then end up working with that same professor for a couple years. Now, I will also say that it's nice for students to be able to work with multiple professors, because you may think you're interested in the project that I just said, but actually you end up being more interested in the kind of cell biology that Dr. Kleindienst does, or the kind of ecology that Dr. Distel does, or maybe you want to switch into a chemistry type project. And so we also encourage students to just try a couple of different things. In fact, we have a course called Biology, well, it's Biology 1107, I forget the exact name of it, but it's meant to introduce students to multiple research projects on a very light level. And you get course credit for it, so you get to see and shadow other upperclassmen and you get to experience it, so that you can then decide, okay, well, I really like that stuff that Dr. Distel was doing, and now I want to reach out to him, or I really like Dr. Caesar's project, and so now I'm going to spend more time, the rest of my time, working with him. So yeah, it's basically just showing the motivation and asking and getting involved. But we have multiple ways to facilitate that.
What other kind of qualities do you like to see in your students?
Well, you know, the basic stuff that any employer would look for, that you can be punctual, that you can keep appointments. You know, when you say you're going to come in, you come in, things like that. I would say maybe a common one that I see with research students is sometimes they're so motivated to get involved and do well that they maybe don't. Let's say they make a mistake, they don't want to admit it. So you kind of got to be humble. And the thing is, remember that we're your professors and we're your instructors and your advisors. We expect you to make mistakes, and we want to correct those mistakes. And so mistakes aren't a problem. Everything that we do here is fairly low stakes. In other words, if you make a mistake, it's not that big of a deal. And so be humble enough and curious enough to admit that you made a mistake or whatever. Allow yourself that. And yeah, just show interest in the subject. You know, we get students, for example, that want to go on and be doctors, and they may go, well, what does working on these insects have to do with my ability to be a doctor? Well, it has to do with your ability to do research. And so you got to be motivated and committed and interested. And again, find the connection in what you're doing to your life, even if it may not seem obvious at first. So that kind of passion and just curiosity. I would say is the main thing. And believe it or not, it's really not about your grades or your GPA or anything like that. You know, I have very good success with students who, let's just say, for lack of a better description, are C students, but they're great researchers. So yeah, you know, just be motivated, be passionate, or at least try and find passion in it, and just be a good worker. That's basically it.
What are some of the things you're working towards right now in your career?
Oh, good question. Huh? Well, so I've been at Schreiner now 6 years, and I just got tenure, which is something that happens to certain faculty members when they've sort of proven themselves. Um, and it gives those faculty members a little bit of job security and things like that. And so I just put a lot of effort into getting that, and haven't really thought much about the next step as far as my career goes. But basically, you know, because of coronavirus, I think most of us are just really focused on helping students navigate what is definitely a weird and uncertain semester coming up, and maybe a couple semesters, we don't know. And at the same time, you know, us faculty are trying to figure out how do we teach effectively in this modified semester schedule that we have coming up, in what's called a hybrid environment, if we have to do more online than what we're used to. How do we do assignments and tests online? How do we make sure students are keeping up with reading? How do we connect with students when we're maybe not meeting as much face to face as we're used to, or trying to pack it into 7 weeks instead of 15 weeks? So that's certainly the immediate focus that a lot of us have. And we kind of expect to be doing some, you know, teaching differently, probably even after coronavirus settles down, if it settles down, and things like that. So just learning how to be a better teacher in a changing world. I'm interested in always improving my own teaching and improving my own research. So trying to keep up with ongoing developments in the field that I work in, reading literature and stuff. And then I guess another big career goal is just, and it's kind of a constant thing for a faculty member who's interested in research, is developing more and more collaborations. We always work with people from other universities, other scientific institutions. For example, I do some work with members of the USDA, the Agricultural Research Service, because insects impact agriculture so heavily. Faculty from other universities, even in other countries and things. And I would say one other big goal that I've had at Schreiner since I got here and still hasn't happened is finding a way to get a regular program for our students who are in science specifically, STEM majors, to have international experiences studying abroad, maybe not in the traditional, you know, you go spend a semester abroad at another university, but summer trips where students can get course credit for doing things like tropical biology or something of that nature. Almost all schools do this, and there's different ways to do it, but it just hasn't happened here at Schreiner recently. And so I would like to see a program, I would like to be involved with starting a program like that. Again, with coronavirus, all that kind of stuff is on stall right now, but hopefully we can get back to that soon.
Do you see the possibility for that for particularly motivated students, or would it need to be something that's an entire program?
Well, no. So the thing is, it does exist, coronavirus aside, already for students on an individual basis. So we always have science students doing summer work abroad, or maybe even in the country, but out of state, let's say, on their own. There's different programs to get involved with that, and certainly faculty here can help direct students to that. What I'm interested in is a more program-based one where we go down as a group and students get course credit and things like that. But students can do certain kinds of experiences on their own, certainly now, once travel restrictions are lifted and things like that.
Okay, that's really cool. Well, fingers crossed that travel restrictions are going to go away then.
Yeah, and let me just give you an example real quick, a couple of examples. I know we had a student do a semester in Ireland, and she was one of our biology majors a couple semesters ago. We had a student do a summer research-based experience in the Galapagos Islands. I've had students go to Colombia. I had a student go to Spain for an internship during the summer. So yeah, these kinds of things happen all the time. I know a lot of our chemistry students end up getting internship experiences, say in Washington, D.C., working at National Institutes of Health and things like that on biochemistry type research projects. Of course, we also place students during summer experiences, even locally, but working at UT Health Science Center in San Antonio and things like that. So there's all kinds of travel opportunities once the restrictions are lifted. And again, it's kind of like the research, the student has to show that initiative and motivation and ask the questions and be a go-getter, so to speak. But if they are, and we can figure out finances, which the university does help with considerably, it's certainly possible for any interested student to get an experience like that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Caesar. Glad we had this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the fall.
Yes, likewise. Can't wait to see all the students. That's the thing that most of us faculty at Schreiner like the most, is just being in the class or being in the lab and hanging out with students. So I very much look forward to it as well.